Secret Superstar, the latest film from India's Aamir Khan, has reached $650 million at the Chinese box office. His successes with previous films, Dangal and PK, have made him India's representative in Chinese cinema. What are the reasons behind his cross-cultural appeal? All of his movies are accompanied by a relatable social topic, from gender inequality to religious dilemmas. Can the Chinese film industry learn from these reality-based films? In 2016, China's box office takings surpassed $8 billion according to the global consultancy PwC, which forecast the Chinese movie market would overtake the US to become the world's largest, possibly by as soon as 2021. However, where does China stand in the quality stakes? China allows only 4 Indian movies in its annual quota of 36 or so foreign films, usually dominated by Hollywood films. So, what's the future of Bollywood in China?
Aamir Khan's new film, Secret Superstar, is taking China by storm. Numerous Chinese audiences have complimented Khan's films for their strong feminist stance and honest attitude towards India's various social issues. Bollywood's appeal seems to be strengthening in China. Similarly, Hollywood is the pinnacle of world film studios, but that doesn't mean it has a monopoly on everything. In 2016, China's box office takings surpassed $8 billion, according to global consultancy PwC, which forecast the Chinese movie market would overtake the US to become the world's biggest, possibly by as soon as 2021. Do we see this trend strengthening in a multipolar world? What is the future for Chinese cinema? And how will Hollywood and Bollywood succeed or fail in China? To discuss these issues and more, I'm happy to be joined in the Beijing studio by Mr. Stephen Hamel, who was the creative producer behind the film Passengers, and Professor Teng Jimen, a regular film critic with CGTN. That's our topic. This is Dialogue. I'm Yang Rui. Gentlemen, are you surprised by the box office of Aamir Khan this time around?
I'm not surprised at all. I think he's a force of nature, and I don't think there's anybody quite like him anywhere, not to speak of just India. But he's really managed to put his thumb on the pulse of something that's really unique, and I think he's done incredible things with it.
And it is specific about the social background against which the films were produced.
Yes, I mean, I think that he's he's reacting directly to the environment and the culture and the society that he lives in and he's grown up in, and his ambitions are huge. So his stories are big. They have big heart. They have big scope, big emotion, and I think it's fantastic. I think that that's truly the reason why he's had such great success in terms of outside of India as well. People are responding to this sort of universal themes that are present in his films, but also the cinema and the sort of scope and the grandeur of a lot of these films.
What about the issues like poverty, feminism, particularly his honest attitude towards the social issues in India?
I agree. I think that this film breaks ground in China, especially in terms of touching upon these issues and shed light on these issues. We see the film as almost like a mirror image in terms of a country in transition, a radical transformation from a basically a planned economy into a market economy, which actually produced so much and so many in terms of poverty, inequality, social injustice, and female being treated equally in workplace like that. And so I think it's popular, especially among the millennium generation, who are now struggling and surviving perhaps in this very new market economy situation. And that's why I think that Han's work, Aamir's work, can be very popular and relatable to young people in this country.
Why do some media reports from the West describe audience response towards the Indian films with a phrase like a guilty pleasure? Why guilty pleasure?
China. I mean, basically, once again, it's China bashing, I would happily say. I mean, China actually lags a little bit behind in terms of making film for the world. And Bollywood actually is very much, I think, advanced in terms of making film for not just the Indian diaspora, but also for the Asian countries in general. I mean, I discussed this with Mr. Hummel, that Indian film appeals to Asian population because of tradition, because of value, for example, value of family, value of community relationship, and all that kind of social fabrics of meaning.
And how do you think in this dogfight between the elephant and the dragon, it is India that is taking the upper hand?
Yeah, it seems right at the moment. Those are the Indian films are being able to be seen internationally on a much larger scale than Chinese films are, for sure. It's you know, they're unapologetic Indian films in terms of that guilty pleasure thing as well. You know, I think that they have a lot of fun with themselves. They want to be entertaining. They're willing to take risks. And so people seem to respond stronger to them in an international audience. I think that the potential, though, for Chinese cinema on an international scale is huge, and it's one of my great passions and interests of being here in China at the moment and working here, is to try and...
The mayor mentioned Bollywood. What are the immediate things that cross your mind in terms of its success and the things that are featured prominently in our movie critics?
Well, Bollywood is known to me, for example, for its idiocracy and also diversification. And most of the artists, I think, working for Bollywood are a kind of virtuoso. Think about the film that we saw back in the 1980s, for example, the film called The Vagabond, Liu Langzhe, and the film was peppered with song and dance sequences that we have never seen in this very country, in which the film were seen as political apparatus tools. I mean, apparatus to educate people, to edify, and to basically to provide a social political mobilizing.
Most of the Indian films that we have imported, starting from even the Cold War, actually reflected what we call the small potatoes, ordinary folks in society, which has long been known for the ugly caste system. Are you surprised that in some of the quarters of the Indian society, there are honest people like Aamir Khan who call for egalitarianism, who wants to level the playing field by featuring burqa-wearing Muslim teens, such as Malik, a 14-year-old girl who wanted to become a celebrity overnight through the internet, and she did succeed.
I think it's fantastic, and I think those are the stories that should be told. Those are the true heroic stories. We have our Marvel movies, but for me, those are the real heroes, and those are the things that really, I think, get people feeling inspired and relatable. And in terms of the relationship between that caste system and social inequality, I think he's a representation of contemporary storyteller, someone who is looking beyond just what's just in front of their nose, but the world around him, and I think he's doing a terrific job at describing
Aamir Khan is both a director and an actor. He's also a producer. He's called the conscience of India. Why?
Once again, if you look at these two films now...
Do we have a Chinese equivalent who can also be called the conscience of China? Feng Xiaogang, do you think Feng Xiaogang could somehow get close to this?
Yeah, no, absolutely. There are lots of these Chinese filmmakers in this country who are doing the same thing. But then once again, see, Aamir Khan is basically seen as the conscience of India because he's all for political equality, social justice, feminism and female equality. This is China. This is what China had been doing ever since 1949. I think the whole Chinese modernity is about a radical breakaway from that very feudal and colonial society prior to 1949. And take director Xie Jin, for example. In his film, for example, like Hibiscus Town, a radical denunciation of the Cultural Revolution, the political persecution, and also some of these great reform movement that care for the general humanity here in China. And so, Feng Xiaogang, once again, look at these Aftershock, The Assembly, about war and peace, Aftershock about the victims of the earthquake, and also the most recent one, I think, which is called Youth. Which I love very much. Once again, about this very legacy of the Cultural Revolution, kind of a roller coaster, emotional roller coaster about these young people, how they survive the vicissitudes of the nation and also the time.
Ironically, the spirit of Lei Feng, a model soldier, was laughed by the end of the story.
That's too bad.
It's very bad, of
right?
course.
I mean, that's the only thing that China can offer to the world in terms of universal value, the Good Samaritan, see, in China.
Some movie critics describe the miraculous box office of Secret Superstar as a rebellion against the digital technology of Hollywood blockbusters because it seems audience in China has been hungry for subject matters of realism instead of fantasy, fiction, science based on digital technology. I mean, such glossy Hollywood skills may have made the Chinese audiences very tired, and they turn to realistic themes for entertainment instead of being entertained by Hollywood digital technology. Do you think Hollywood is facing a crisis?
Absolutely. I think what you just said is absolutely accurate, and I think that everyone has a superhero fatigue, let's call it. And I think we all are yearning for something much more, the thing why we fell in love with cinema in the first place. And I think films like that and others are reminders that we still are able to articulate and create and tell stories that stir our imagination.
Here is my question. Do you think the movies we imported from Hollywood do represent American dream, or they are just the second or third class Hollywood movies because of the censorship that we boast of?
I think yes. I mean, the stuff that we are now actually importing are not that they're a mainstream, perhaps. For example, take the Marvel films, for example. They are basically for the mainstream young viewers or people maybe growing up since the 1960s, right? You watch those films from the 1960s in post-war world. But I think we neglect the best part of Hollywood, or maybe non-Hollywood, off Hollywood. For example, indie films. I mean, America has a great indie film sector, I mean, outside Hollywood. And for example, the Sundance Festival, I mean, that featured these great film festivals. Like last year when I was at Park City, I mean, I saw great films, for example, like The Manifesto, and these interesting stuff that combines this criticism of capitalism. But, and so once again, I think that China is now changing its heart. There's a change of heart right now.
I don't think it's just China, by the way. I think everybody
all the
wants
world.
that. Absolutely. I think everybody wants that same thing.
And so basically, Superstar is made not just for the mind. It's not made for the mind, but it's for the heart. It's for the hearts of these young people and these people yearning for realism.
Let me go back to something that has surprised the Muslims in this country. A film about the burqa-wearing Muslim teen seeking to become a pop star seems like an unlikely hit for China, considering online comments often decry acknowledging China's Muslims. I don't know why. Similarly, Cannes movie, Dango, also about young women struggling for their dreams in a male-dominated sport, was one of the best-grossing foreign films in China in 2016. The image of Muslims, well, in China, we treat all religions as equal, and it's very dangerous and politically risky to demonize any of the ethnic groups or religions that we have in this country. What about, say, the success of this movie that praises the Muslim girl who fully utilizes the internet, and she went viral overnight with a wonderful vocal song? So do you think what we call decrying the image of Muslims is a false subject matter? It doesn't exist, or it's just a reflection of radical sentiments from some extremists on the internet?
Well, like you said, I mean, China has been a huge exception in terms of seeing Muslim as a kind of a fundamental force at work against the trend of the world or something. But Muslim in this country has always been seen the equals of other nationalities, and so in this sense the film appeals to the Chinese because it transcends religion. It's not about simply a Muslim girl. We see her as one of us. We see her as one of those struggling young people out there in the cosmopolitan, such a great cosmopolitan city. I mean, you see thousands of young people and trying to struggle for a place in that very industrialized society. And so India, this young girl appeals because I think it is that very courage, the guts that she has to use the new technology, and also perhaps to break grounds from other constraints. And especially when we know that India is a caste society with Hindu religion predominates, and in this sense we see her as a real something like a rebel, but not the kind of radical.
One thing about the Muslims and Islamic culture that the West doesn't quite like is the use of burqa to cover up the faces of women. This is a very sensitive issue. In France, to my knowledge, the government prevents burqas from being used in public places to show respect for women in a Western country. So what do you think of the innuendo or the criticism that is implied in this movie? I mean, if you cannot answer.
No, I mean, I think the symbolism is obvious of what it means and how it means, and sort of where they came from, respecting the past and the culture and the traditions, but still moving towards the future and what you want and what your dreams are, and living in a society where, you know, you're a minority, and how to survive that and how to make that balance. Those are all things that are specific in that movie, obviously, to the burqa.
Let me ask you one follow-up question. What is the Hollywood policy about the use of burqa in any movies that concern Muslims?
I don't think there is a policy. In the wake of
September 11th.
Oh, I don't think there is. I think people...
You don't think there are any policy restrictions against the use of burqa?
In movies?
In movies or in the streets of American cities?
Oh, you rarely see someone in a full burqa in the United States, it's true. There's certainly no policies in motion pictures whether or not one is able to depict that. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. You are watching Dialogue with Mr. Stephen Hamill, who was the creative producer behind the film Passengers. I'm Professor Teng Jimen, a regular film critic with CGTN. We'll be back in a few minutes. Please do stay with us. Welcome back, gentlemen. In succeeding where many of India's finest actors have failed in the past, Cannes has given rise to hopes not only that Bollywood has finally cracked the secret of the world's second largest movie market, but that India's image may be softening in the eyes of the great Asian rebel. What do you think of the potentials for the quota of only 4 Indian movies to be broken up, to be eliminated because of its popularity of the Indian movie?
I think it's fantastic. I think the people speak.
And do you ever have any strong complaints against the censorship and quota system?
Well, I don't think there should be.
Look me in the eye and give me an honest answer.
I don't think there should be a quota system. I think that...
But what about protection of homegrown movie industry without the policy protection?
Yes, I think that there's a balance between both those things, and I understand the quota system is potentially...
Timo, do you think our homegrown movie industry will collapse the moment Hollywood movies are allowed to invade us freely?
No, not now. I think if you asked me the question 4 years ago or 5 years ago, I think, yes, I mean, the danger lied over there, but then not now. I see a tremendous growth in terms of Chinese filmmaking over the past 5 years, and especially since 2010, when China basically relaxed that very quota system from 20 to 34.
Maybe we should go back to what happened in the year 2001 when China was allowed to enter into the WTO. Many were worried that our homegrown industries, the SOE, may collapse overnight with overseas multinationals intruding into our market bravely. But nothing happened. Nothing happened. Instead, ironically, cheap textiles inundated European markets, and one China shoe shop was set ablaze in Madrid by the angry Spaniards because of the cheap and good shoes that they imported from China. So the anger of Spaniards did shock Europeans. That's the reversal of what we had expected. With this in mind, do you think a more relaxed policy to encourage the imports of Hollywood and Bollywood movies will lead to more competitive homegrown movies in China or the other way around?
I absolutely do. I think it can only create a positive
You think it's the other way
marketplace.
around?
Yeah, and I think that the audiences will speak on behalf of what they want and what they want to see, and we should always listen to them. Yeah, I'm someone who's all for not restricting content and not restricting art or the messaging of that. But I understand that in each society, in each culture, there are ways that we're trying to protect those things, preserve those things, and that's also good. So I think it's a
What are the
balance.
things you have to keep in mind if you consider introduction of more of the Hollywood movies into the Chinese market? Restrictions or taboos or commercial rules or whatever that you have to let your American nationals know before they have the luxury to talk about having more of the market shares in China?
Yeah, I mean, I think actually, you mentioned this before, I think it would be terrific if there was a regulation that maybe we were obliged to bring in more independent movies to China and not so much always these giant blockbusters and the superhero movies, and allow people to be you know, more familiar with the independent film that's being made right now in North America, which I think is very powerful. And
do you think we are increasingly aware and we are increasingly embarrassed by the abusive use of digital technology, the fantasy, the fiction? I mean, the Chinese would love to have realistic movies, but none of them have been admitted to the Chinese market. Do you think it's our Bureau of Radio, Film and Television that takes the blame, or do you think it's your commercial considerations? What are the barriers that prevent Hollywood movies from entertaining our domestic audience here with good stories? I mean, instead of Transformers and
right. Yeah, I
that
think
kind of stuff could only please a younger generation, not people like me, not people of my age.
you're right. No, you're absolutely right. I think
Do you
it's a
agree,
mixture of things.
I mean, absolutely. I think there is tremendous, actually, good quality indie films like Spy Bridge that we have been talking
Exactly.
about.
Fantastic.
Right? It's
That's
fantastic.
Typical of Hollywood
Right.
standard.
And real American national cinema, for example, the Coen Brothers films.
Sure.
No Country for Old Men. These
Amazing.
are great films.
Yeah.
We should import to educate them and to know, help us know more about America. Now America is everything about this giant, I mean, robot thing. I mean, out there.
Robots.
No more robots.
Got totally fed up with the
Terminator
robots.
thing. I mean, yeah,
Abusive use of robots.
Yeah.
it's such a shame.
Totally
and-
fed up. It's a
Yeah.
shame for
Shame.
Hollywood movies.
I think that's why I think that we need Mr. Hamill and more people like Mr. Hamill to bring more quality, diversified, multicultural projects, right? Like Bruce Lee project you were working on.
Yeah. I'm trying, guys, and I'm a big believer that here in China there is such a large pool of incredibly talented folks, and they all want to create more complex, more diversified, more powerful content, and I'm very lucky to be part of that.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I appreciate it so much. And I know that Bruce Lee is also a great hero here in the mainland.
Yes, yeah.
I used to teach a course, and I actually introduced Bruce Lee and also Chuck Norris at the same
Oh
time.
my gosh.
Yeah.
By the
must
way,
have
I'm a
been
big
day.
fan of Kung Fu Panda.
Yeah.
Do you
And
think we're going to have a follow-up of this movie?
I don't, you know, I actually spoke to the writers of Kung Fu Panda last week, and I'm not sure if there'll be a follow-up, but they said to me, we want to do more stuff in China. We spent so much time researching it and getting to know China for these movies. We feel like we have so much more to say, and I think they're right.
What do you think of the driving force or reasons behind the huge success of Kung Fu Panda in China? Many Chinese were caught unprepared, and they were surprised by the deep understanding of
Yes.
American friends about the Chinese philosophy that that's deeply implied in our Kung Fu, in our
Yes.
martial arts.
Completely.
I myself was totally surprised by the use of Taoism, Buddhism in some of the elements of Kung Fu Panda.
Yeah, I mean, those writers spent a lot of time in China, first of all. That wasn't something that was just sort of looked upon in Wikipedia and they got some information. They really spent some serious time here and asked lots of questions and paid a lot of attention. And really, I think the result was the film you just described. And the universality of that story is the thing that touches people around the world, which they've been able to do.
Another way to take out money from the pockets of young parents is the animation industry, the Walt Disney. What do you think of the prospects in this regard, Jimeng? Maybe you are too old to have more understanding, sufficient enough to ground Hollywood, Walt Disney, this lion's share of the market.
Well, China is becoming more and more in terms of diversified film markets, and that's why I think we need Walt Disney, the Disney World, or the Disneyland into China, because it appeals to the young viewers. And if you look at these millennium generation, they
Lion King, man, that's the best so far I've ever seen.
That's your favorite?
Right. The
Lion
music,
King.
the dialogue,
Yeah,
right?
Lion King. Yeah.
Right.
This is just unbelievable. It's just, it's a miracle. It's about heroism. It's about love. It's about the relationship between man and animal. It's about Africa, the wild beauty of Africa. It's everything about beauty and charm.
I totally agree.
And perhaps the patriarch theme,
that's true.
theme, right? The lion, the father, commending this great family of small lions, right, and sending them out on this historic track to train and to educate and perhaps to turn them into a real man. Huh?
President Trump is notoriously known for trade protectionism. Do you think more imports of Hollywood blockbusters will help ease the tensions between the two economies?
Yes, movies are the thing that will save the world, of course. Yes, they should, and they could. And I think that that language of cinema and bringing people together over shared interest is a very powerful medium. And if the stories that we tell are ones that are about coming together and inspirational ones, then all the better.
So Hollywood is, of course, an indispensable part of American soft power. It's about American dream. It's about science. It's about the politically correct theme of being patriotic, right?
Well, part of it, yes. I mean, Hollywood is all about, yes, this is so-called patriotism. If you look at Air Force One, I mean, that's all about America being the center, right? We are the leader of the free world. But then Hollywood has to consider other markets. China now is rising, and China's film industry, like you said, it's all about $80 billion US business. And Hollywood has to look to China. Hollywood has to cooperate with China. And that's why I think I'm looking forward to more co-production films made here in this country.
And through the co-production, I believe the Chinese counterparts in the movie industry will have a lot more to learn and would get more inspirations from the role model of Hollywood and perhaps from Bollywood as well. Aamir Khan is a role model for Chinese moviegoers and Chinese movie directors like Feng Xiaogang, who surprised the Chinese market.